Okay, hello everyone. It's great to have you all with us on this series of Stay Connected that you know is a series of webinars that Esade is conducting to share the knowledge that we have, but also the experience of accomplished executives that we have to have as part of our faculty body in the different programs that we deliver. I have to say that this webinar is being forecasted or transmitted via the YouTube and LinkedIn as well. And in this case, we have our keynote speaker, Xavier, who will be talking about leading in turbulent times. Before I speak briefly about our keynote speaker for the day, let me mention that the choice and why did we think that Xavier was the right person to answer questions specifically on how to lead in these turbulent times comes for two reasons. One, he's an accomplished executive. He has been the CEO in several firms. He has been in management for over 26 years. And right now, he also serves in governing bodies. He's part of different boards of directors, 12 of them. And he has been with us at Esade since 2005. So 15 years ago, we had the chance to meet Xavier. He was stepping down from his last position as the CEO. And at the time, we began a number of courses, etc. But then suddenly the financial crisis hit. That was back in 2008. And at the time, we remember that several of the participants that we had in our executive education programs, they always asked, so why don't you write something on how to manage in these times? We've seen lots of information on what's the sources of this crisis, what could be the potential impact, and so on and so forth. The same story as today. Today we see everything about what will be the macroeconomic disaster and the impact and the pandemics and whether there's PRCs tests or multi-tests or zero prevalence and all this stuff. But in the end, what is important for managers of, okay, what do I do now? What should I do? How do I manage my teams? How do I lead the organization? And so on and so forth. Back at the time in 2008, Xavier took this challenge. He wrote a chapter on a book in terms of, and the topic was managing crisis. I had the privilege to work with Xavier in this endeavor. And then now 12 years later, we are here conducting this webinar and with this topic that is living in turbulent times and using classic recipes for a new scenario. So, Xavier, welcome. It's a privilege to be with you. And probably let me begin by the first question. Why is it that we have to consider classic recipes for a new scenario?
Hi all. Thanks, Pedro, for your kind introduction, and thanks, Esade, for offering me the possibility to share with you my experience on this topic, and especially thanks to everybody connected today with us. This is clearly a different situation. This is clearly a different crisis. For the first time ever, the entire world, not one part, and the entire economy is under panic. For the first time, health and money are in danger, and in a especially complicated situation where politics and social unrest exist all over the world. It means that at a certain extent, everybody tries to find new things, new solutions for a brand new crisis. My point here is that I strongly believe that despite it's a new crisis, we have in the world enough information, enough experience based on past situations we can manage. My point here and my first recommendation is try to talk with people that has had in the past experience. Try to talk with people that have been living in situations like this. Try to recover your books from the gurus. Try to learn and read about emotional intelligence, because at the end of the story there is an issue of emotional intelligence. Try to read Goleman. Try to recover Peter Drucker and how to manage crisis. At the end of the story, we are managing one more crisis. Or at the end of the story, try to read Kotter and read about change, because at the end of this crisis that sooner or later we need to change our mind, change our companies. My point here is that there is enough information in the world, there is no talent, there is no experience we can apply, and I would like to share with you, based on these readings, based on my experience, a couple of recommendations we can call classic ones. At the end of the story, probably algorithm is going to find the solution for the vaccine, is going to drive autonomous car. Probably through the algorithm, we are going to go to Mars. But in the current times, in turbulent times, my point is that what we really need is leadership. We need leaders that manage people, because people is the most important part of the story. And this is the reason on recovering experiences, recovering classic recipes.
Xavier, as we were preparing this session, we had a conversation on the different crises that you had to face in your life as a manager, as a board member, and there were several that were already health related. For example, there was the mad cow's disease that was hit back in 1996, the SARS, the previous one that hit in 2003, the bird flu that hit in 2004, the Ebola, the recent crisis 2014, and also another outbreak relatively recently. So what's different in this one?
But I live most of these crises, especially the crisis in China. The point is that between past crises and this crisis, especially the one that happened in China 2002. In 2002, I was the CEO of a company with production units all over the world, with 3 production units in China, 1,500 people. And same happens like the crisis happening today. SARS-1 is probably very similar to SARS-2. But the only difference, or the key difference, is that the war in 2002 or in the past century, or even in 2008, was not as global as is today. The crisis in China in 2002 was solved after 3 or 4 months, very complicated, but at the end of the story, nothing happens. Why? Because the war was not global. China was not an actor. China was not relevant. People were not traveling from China to all over the world. Now, every day before the crisis, 10 million people were traveling all over the world. Imagine between December, January, and February, probably 3 or 4 million people moved from China to other places. It's estimated that 500,000 people moved from China to the States. Because of the world is global, and because the world is digital, because we are all connected, and because the world was not this way. That's why the situation is very, very different from the past. Now we are managing the entire world. The world is global. The world is digital. The money is digital. The people is global. Everything moves here and there. China accounts for over 30% of the manufacturing outputs. And with the products, SARS is moving. With the people, SARS is moving. But at the end of the story, we need to manage the situation, and with the old recipes, because we don't have new recipes.
Thank you, Xavier. So tell us about your classic recipes. Which ones are those? Which are the advice? What's the advice that you would give to managers and board members who have to run and navigate through this crisis?
Okay. Message devoted to the ones that one way or another you are leading companies, you are leading people. I have for today 4 very basic principles, very basic recommendations. At the end of the story is common sense, but let me share with you these 4 ideas. The first idea is about communication. Communication is key, is always key in our companies, in the world, but in moments of crisis, communication is crucial, is vital. People need to be informed, and my first recommendation is pay a lot of attention the way you communicate with all the stakeholders. Try to prepare a specific message for any kind of stakeholders. And communication is not an issue of quantity. Communication is an issue of quality. It's important to, it's not an issue of talking every day to everybody, telling everything. It's an issue of sending targeted messages, very clear, very simple, with very clear messages about what we need to do. It's an issue of be simple, be direct, tell the truth, tell whatever you know, and be open to all the stakeholders. Try to keep calm and convey confident to the people. But question number one, recommendation number one, recipe number one is communication, pay attention, do your best when communicate with everybody. My second recommendation is be simple. In very complex moments, probably this is the most complex moment we have been living in business, communication must be very, very simple. Strategy must be very, very simple. Action plan must be very, very simple. My point here is that don't confuse the people sending hundreds of instructions and guidelines about 25,000 things to do. Let's focus on 4 or 5 topics: cash protection, how we organize, kind of decisions about future investments, and everything related with cost. And maybe focus on these 4 or 5 topics and create a very simple plan and focus on the execution, because in terms of complexity, people need to work on very simple things. I say no more than 5 messages, no more than 5 ideas, because people is going to be very, very confused. Pay attention to the implementation, be with the people, and send to the people sense of urgency, because in a very few days, you must try to do many, many things. Classic recipe number 3 will be lead with the example. In moment of crisis, people look to the top of the organization. Where are the bosses? What the bosses are doing? What kind of messages we are receiving for the shareholders? It's a very important moment. It's the moment of the truth. It's the moment when people need to see you committed, relaxed, sending clear messages of rigor. You need to be there. At the same time, you need to find to make a balance between be very strict and be very empathic. The example is key. If you are in these moments empathic with the people, is going to help you. And recommendation number 4, recipe number 4 is about ethics. It's about the most critical decision now is that how we split, how we balance the sacrifice we are all going to do or we need to do between the different stakeholders, which is the part for the shareholders, which is the part of the contribution of the top management, which is the part of the contribution of the employees. It's very, very important in this moment to act on a fair basis. Companies that are capable to balance the effort, the sacrifice that for sure is going to have between all the stakeholders is important. My recommendation here is that sit with your shareholders and ask for decisions on dividends, on capital, etc., etc. Sit with your management team and take decisions on what to do, on your salaries, on your bonus, how you are going to contribute to the story with a reduction on your condition. Talk with the employees and tell what you are expecting and what you need for their part. Talk with your suppliers. Talk with your clients. At the end of the story, message number 4, ethics are key, and the sacrifice that will be very important need to be balanced between the different stakeholders. Talk with all the stakeholders, ask to all the stakeholders to split the effort in order to avoid that certain parts are taking all the pain. Pain is for everybody in these situations.
Xavier, let me connect the next question with one of the questions that is coming through the chat right now, which is following the logic that you explained, that the world is more interconnected, there will be more people more constantly traveling and moving around still, right? Even if there's a reduction, there will be plenty of that. And it's very likely that we will see another outbreak or other situations or other pandemics. So moving forward, what about the day after? So what should companies do to prepare themselves for other situations of crisis like this ones that we know that will happen eventually? The question is not whether it will happen, it will. The question is when. So what about the day after, Xavier?
Sooner or later, we'll have a day after. Maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, will depend on the different region, will depend on the different situations, obviously will depend on the different sectors. And the point is that There is no one recipe for everybody. It's important to focus on your company, focus on your industry, focus on your sector, and try to define which kind of future do you have. My first recommendation is, in any case, be prepared for a marathon. This is not 100 meters race. The next 2 or 3 years will be affected by, and don't declare victory too soon. When you see the first indication that everything is going to be normal, don't relax. Continue, be patient, because it's going to last longer. Recommendation number 2 for the recovery is take care with your people. Your teams will be very much affected by. Teams exhausted, management team working 24 hours, 7 days a week on over the video that is making things much more complicated. At the end of the story, at the end of the first part of the crisis, people will be, organization will be in a certain extent damaged. My second recommendation is sit with your advisors in human resources, sit with your experts, with psychologists, and try to define a plan to recover people, teams, on a personal point of view, on the moral point of view. Try to work together and try to rethink the whole story. Recommendation number 3 is everybody's saying the future will be very different, will be another world. My point here is that I don't know. What is clear that any crisis is coming with learnings. My point is that starting today, in a piece of paper, write any kind of learnings you are taking from this crisis, and try to apply the day after. Learnings on the level of digitalization of your company, decisions about how you are managing e-commerce, decisions about your supply chain and how you were organized before this crisis arrived. Even the organization, maybe you can reconsider the way you were organized. My point is very important, is every crisis comes with certain learnings, and it's important to put in a paper and apply the day after, because there's a certain relaxation when everything finished. Happens in 2008 after the crisis. Suddenly, when we are out, everybody relax. And final recommendation for the future is that opportunities will appear, sectors will change, consolidation will happen, and probably when if you are surviving, if you are resisting well, and you are strong, and your shareholders are in line with you and are ready for continue investing, my point is that be open-minded for the opportunities that for sure will appear at the end of a story, especially on the way of strategic alliances and in the world of the mergers and acquisitions. At the end of the process, sectors will be different, and probably opportunities for you to find growth through inorganic growth will happen. Those are ideas for the future, but for the time being, let's concentrate on the present, because the present is it's where managers must put all the attention.
Xavier, any last piece of advice you would like to make before we move on to the Q&A?
Well, it's a message for you as a persons, as people. After 40 years of being in business, I have discovered that management is a risky business. It's a risky business for your health. It's a risky business for you as a person. And the moments of crisis are creating a lot of tension, a lot of stress on the organizations. And you as a leader are going to take care, we have been talking about, but these situations are going to put a lot of pressure on you. And my final recommendation, especially devoted to you, anyone in business today, is try to protect you. Take care on you personally. And how to do it is very complicated. Easy to say, difficult to apply, but take 1 hour a day for you. Close your eyes, relax, do whatever you like it. Music of your when you were very young, the music that connect with your body and your heart, or yoga, or relaxation, or gym, or whatever. But you need certain room every day to disconnect. You need to sleep 5 or 6 hours a day. Talk with your doctors. Your health is in danger. And sorry for this final message, but moments of crisis are very dangerous for the leaders. We are taking a tremendous responsibility. And my final message for you is take it on you. It's good for you. It's good for your organization. The more you are in good shape, the more you are relaxed, the more you are calm, the more you can convey direction, guidelines for the future, the best for the entire organization. Take care on you, because you are suffering every day. This is my final message, and thanks.
Xavier, and let's move to the Q&A. There's one that says there's a number, but one that says, what kind of business will be successful after this crisis? What would a successful company look like? More digital, you mentioned some of that, right? More resilient. So what would you say?
Common sense says that everything related with health, everything related with digitalization, everything relates with e-commerce. But you know the story. My point is that whatever industry you are, even the one you can be suffering more, we provide option for future. If you are surviving, if you are finishing the crisis in good shape, also there are opportunities for you. But in any case, digitalization, health, food, whatever of industries. But I have no special favorite. Every single company, every single industry will have a chance. The issue is survive and gain the battle, gain the virus.
Gain the virus. Xavier, you insisted on proximity. Be close to your team. Make sure you are leading by example. One question in the chat is how can you lead and gain this proximity with your team and the organization and other stakeholders if you cannot move? I mean, how do you do that in this online world that we are living in?
It's true. It's true. My classic recipe of management is looking at the eyes of the people, and be in connection and talk one-to-one. And this is today not always easy, but thanks to the new technologies, we can do it. Imagine this crisis without internet. Imagine this crisis without Zoom, handouts, and all kind of issues. Imagine without video conferences. Even through the images, you can connect. It's an issue of credibility. It's an issue of empathy. At the beginning of the talk, I was recommending read again Goleman. It's an issue of emotional intelligence, and it's clear that one-to-one, close to the people, is much more easy. But you can develop and demonstrate your emotional intelligence through the computer. Try it. Honesty, talk with the people, be available. Just be available, except 1 hour a day. That is for you.
Xavier, there's one person in the chat that mentions that he or she read your zero-based budget concept in the book chapter that you wrote several years ago. And this person is intrigued. What is the zero-based budget approach? What do you mean by that?
It's a very old concept that applies every day, and applies especially in the moment of crisis. Is as simple as take your P&L from top to the bottom and consider what one by one all the expenses you have, and consider if they are necessary or not. My experience says that with the years, companies, like people, we gain weight, we gain kilos, zero-based budget is a very old technique that is back to to the table, thanks to the private equity companies that are applying a lot, and is try to look across your P&L, what kind of issues, what kind of expenses do you need to keep, and which one you can avoid. And in current times, and especially in crisis time, maybe you can find 3, 4, 5% of cost out through these techniques. It's take with your chief financial officer and look the entire P&L from top to bottom.
There's one question, Xavier, in the chat that says, so one of the recommendations people are getting on, or a natural reaction of managers, is freeze all investments. Does that make sense? Because this person says that you just mentioned that there could be opportunities to invest. So invest or not to invest? What do you think? What's the investment approach?
Short term, stop any investment is not related with the day-to-day. Short term, invest any non-core, any not immediately necessary investment. Maintain whatever investment you need to protect your people, protect the health of your organization, protect your equipment, but obviously try to freeze major investment that can damage your cash flow. That is the most critical thing to protect today. And if at the end of the process your P&L has recovered, especially your balance sheet is safe because your company is not having a tremendous debt, and you have money enough, and your shareholders are ready to invest, this is a moment to come back very aggressively and make investment in additional investments in your assets, or even buying companies. It's short term is retreat, and very soon move back. In my experience says that in these kind of situations, family-owned companies has an advantage, because family-owned companies are in general much more prudent with the balance sheet. The level of debt it's much lower, and can react much faster, and can have money enough to accelerate in moments when others are on the move back. But will depend very much on your balance sheet. If your balance sheet allows you to invest, let's go. If your balance sheet is highly indebted, you need to protect, and it's a full reaction, because probably will be no future if there is no present.
Xavier, one last question that I see. So you are now a member of different boards of directors. You are on at the governance level. You are not at the forefront. You're not on the first line. You're not an executive. So one of our questions is: would you like to be managing directly businesses right now?
I have the probably I'm mid-60s and 40 years of experience. I tend to believe that I'm much more prepared to lead directly companies that when I was doing. The only issue is that probably I don't have the energy, I don't have the stamina, I don't have the capacity to resist, and probably I would like to be there leading a company in this crisis, but having 40, 45, 50 years. This is very tough, and probably I'm not in a. It will be very difficult for me to manage. That's why I'm so insisting so much in taking care of you, because it's very stressing the situation. But I would like to be, but with 25 years less.
Thank you, Xavier. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, everyone, for coming and spending this time with us. We hope that all the classic recipes that Xavier shared with us help you, or at least give you some food for thought. And in any case, we look forward to stay connected with you all from here from Esade. All the best to you all. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Bye, Xavier.
Good luck. Take care.